There's blood chokes and then there's neck cranks where you can still breathe and stuff. Yes, highly uncomfortable. So I tap, but like I think I've been through enough injuries and like I keep healing. And like I said, you just think of like what others who haven't made it as far as you should go out and have fun and get as much use out of this thing as you can.
Welcome in to Menfolk Journeys, the podcast of great conversations with men. I'm your host, Chris Foster, and we're going to explore how we wear this beautiful and confusing mantle of manhood in the 21st century. Look, I get it. In public life, a lot of men are knuckleheads. But in private life, we can be thoughtful and we can be reflective if we have the right conversation, if we feel comfortable talking about our story. And we all have a great story to tell. And we can all learn from those stories. We can learn about who we've been, who we are, and who we want to be. And that's why we're going to have this conversation, so we can learn from other men just like us. And today we're going to talk with my friend Eriq. Eriq was born into chaos. Growing up, it was a very chaotic environment for him. As he moved on to young adulthood, there was still chaos in his life, but he found a way to create a discipline within himself later in life, which is now manifested in a new habit and a new passion and a new pursuit that requires discipline, attention, awareness, and focus. He is one of the most indomitable men I've ever known in my whole life, and throughout all of the struggles, he's come out to be focused and loving and joyful. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Welcome in to Menfolk Journeys. For listeners, this conversation includes moments of child abuse, and there is a moment of contemplating suicide. If you are contemplating suicide, please make sure you call 988, the Suicide Hotline Prevention Center, and make sure that if there's someone you love who is experiencing those thoughts, to call the Suicide Hotline Prevention Center. Thank you. So, Eriq Devine, welcome in.
Hey, welcome. Thanks for having me, Chris.
Absolutely. Why don't we get started and tell us a bit about yourself?
Well, I've been married for 33 years and very happy, and it's continually growing. It's the best thing I got, Chris. I'm going to start off with that. My lovely wife. Together, we have 3 children, and then I have my oldest son, Thomas. That's I always joke BC before Chris. Before we fell in love and got married, I had Thomas. And then, so me and Chris raised two girls and one boy together. Thomas, I believe, is like 35, if I'm not mistaken. And my youngest daughter, Kiara, is 26. Michaela is, I think, 8, I believe. And I'm not sure about Josh. He's 30 somewhere. But that's been great. We just all split up, so we're kind of like empty nesters now. I mean, Michaela left for Thomas, never really lived with us, but Thomas and all the kids get along great, and it's awesome. But yeah, so Chris and I are in a kind of a new stage in our life, having raised the kids, and they were gone. And I work for I'm an analyst for a large IDN healthcare system, and that's about it. I was born in Long Beach, California, and raised in Bakersfield. Yeah.
So now, it's interesting. You said you were born in Long Beach and raised in Bakersfield. You had mentioned on your first, kind of as we do our preambles and kind of the things you wanted to talk about. So Eriq, what I learned about you, and what we learned is that you were adopted kind of right after birth. For your adoptive parents, did they talk to you about that? Did you know that you were adopted?
No, it just it came up one day in a in like an argument, but like I had a bunch of cousins and the family I was adopted into, and I don't know, somebody was making fun. They knew, and I didn't know what adopted meant, and they're like,
Hmm.
"Well, he's adopted," and I was like, all I knew I was something, right? So I asked my parents, I was like, was I adopted? Like, I don't even know if I could pronounce the word correctly, and then it just blew up. Like that was like. My parents say always fight. It was always there was a lot of fighting, and anyway, uh, my dad was like, just tell him, and my mom was like, no, and so that's how I kind of found out, and so then they
Wow.
did that, and I
Well,
didn't
how
what
old were you when that happened?
I was young. I know I was living in Bakersfield, so I was like around at least 5 or 6, maybe 7
Wow.
age, and yeah. So then I just
What?
okay, whatever.
Yeah. What a way to find out, though. That's such an odd way. Do you remember feeling? Do you remember what you were feeling like at the time? I mean, you were really young, or does it kind of move past and you just move on?
Yeah, at the time, my dad is awesome, and my adopted dad, the guy that raised me, he said, "Look, son, we chose you. We chose you. That's what adopted me. We chose you." Because your brother Kevin, he was an accident. Like we didn't even know we could have kids. Like so. But you were chosen. So after that, I was okay with it until way later in life, when you start, thinking back on things. I wanted to find my people.
Sure. It's interesting with adoption. I love that phrase you said about ch- they chose you because, when you have a child naturally, or it's not really choice, right? You don't choose that child. There's an egg and a sperm comes in, egg pushes all the other sperm away. A child is created, whether it's God or fate or however it is. The child's born without being chosen to be born. The child is born. But in an adoptive situation, they chose you. It's just a tremendous act of love, I think,
It
right?
is, and I think the way that my dad told me the story too, it put my little heart at ease. This is like, I'm not gonna die from this thing. It's it just is what it is. And he told me, he says, um, well, I don't know exactly how he told it to me at the time, but later in life, I learned I'm mixed race. Uh, and so back in those days in 1968, they wanted to find a mixed race couple to take this mixed race baby. And so my adopted father was Irish, and my adopted mother was Mexican. And so we think we got a kid for you. We'll bring him in, and we'll give you a minute. And here he is. And my dad, they put my dad held me, and they said, we'll give you a minute just to make sure you guys bond or whatever. And my dad said, what the hell are you talking about? I can tell you right now, I love this kid. This is my son. He said, you were so beautiful. So, yeah, man, my dad was awesome, and he instilled that in me. And, yeah, I always loved my dad. My mother, on the other hand, she was pretty vile, human being. And,
Mm,
so it was crazy. Um, but my dad was in the Navy, right? So he wasn't always around. He would
sure.
take off a lot, and years later, he would tell me, he would say, "Son, it wasn't that I didn't love you boys, that I wasn't there. It's just that I couldn't stand your mother."
Right. Wow.
And I was
It's interesting, right? Because as a child, you probably are aware of parental relationships, right? You're aware that they have a relationship, but you don't know what that actually could mean to those people and their feelings as adults.
right, and there were moments like I remember they would gather us together, and they told us they were splitting up, and then there was some heartache, and then they get us back together, say, oh, we're coming, we're not going to split up, but eventually they did, and
Hmm.
they would both drink a lot. Really, my dad got violent, like pretty much like one really good time that stuck with me. Not never towards me, but my mother when my dad was overseas, she was just horrendous. She would say things like, "Get out of my sight. You make me sick to my stomach." Like she must have said
Oh,
1,000 times, like things like that. And then she was just weird. She had like the craziest superstitions. If I ever lifted my hand to defend myself, like it would turn to a rock or something. I couldn't have hats on the bed. Couldn't like the weird thing about mirrors. She was just weird, man. And and then things, she was going out with, they my both my parents were having relationships with each other. Um, so like I have a sister, but I don't know who her dad is. I think maybe it could be this guy Raul, or maybe this other guy that was around sometimes. I don't know. I told her, I said, I'm sorry, I don't know who your dad is. But she's super, super dark, man. So like,
wow, that's crazy and chaotic.
but and then like she was more violent. Like I don't remember what it was. Like what did I do? But I do remember she would take my grab me by the back of my hair and shove my face into the stove, the oven, right, when it was on. And you can imagine being, horrified at that. um, I remember like she didn't like my dad. They finally divorced, and we were, have to go over there and have visits, of course. And we would come back, and she would like interrogate us, like, we're just kids. But the craziest thing I remember was she got us as soon as we walked in the house. She said, "Get your ass in the bath right now. You smell like them pinche gabachos," which I think means it's a bad name, a derogatory term for white people. I don't
Oh
speak
my
Spanish.
God.
That was like a secret language. We don't want you, she never, she played a lot of psychological games. But anyway, so and she's scrubbing us with those little green pads, me and my brother, because apparently we smell like white people, right?
Oh
Yet
my gosh.
at the time you don't think in your head, like, well, you married him, like, what is that? Like, you have no idea. And then I think part of it, I later on, dude, I grew up, right? I became a man. You start reflecting on your life, and you're like, whoa, 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 what, and so you return back to confront, mother, and with, my family was all there, my, everybody
Mhm.
was there, and mom, like, what, what, so I talked about the stove first, and she says, she denied, "I don't know what you're talking about." And at that, just like, it floored me. But I said, "What? No way. I distinctly remember. I don't have scars." And she goes, "Well, I never like actually burned you. I would just put you, just close enough there so you can feel the heat, just so you understand."
Oh my
And like,
God.
and yeah, so what do you do like with that? Like, I know that, people say hurt people. I have very little idea how she was raised. I know more about my dad. How
Mhm.
my father didn't have a great upbringing. Even though I could say this, like his dad was gone. He was abused by his stepmother. He was thrown in the snow. He lived in Idaho, and horrible things happened to him. I mean, to this day, his feet are frostbit. Like, I don't know how
Wow.
we can become parents, right? Like, how does this freaking happen?
It's so odd though, Eric, it's so interesting because you said the first words that your dad said to you was, "I love this son. He's my son." He kind of pulled you into his heart. Now did you end up like leaving your mom and living with him?
Exactly, that's what happened. So eventually, my dad gets out of the Navy, and he did 20 years, retired, and went into civilian life, and I knew. And I just remember, like, one day I just woke up, and it just says, "You can leave. You can just leave. You can escape this." And
Right.
so I did. I called him up, and his new wife Elizabeth. Uh, oh, that's not her real name, but his anyway, she was very kind to me, and she had 5 children by 3 different men, and when my
Wow.
sister fell in love, right? And my dad, like, just the way he loved me, he loved all her kids, like, stand
Hmm.
up. And so when I called and he wasn't available, um, his wife picked up and said, "Absolutely, I'll go get you." And she told me she was later afraid that uh, I guess he would have been my stepfather, but I never really looked at him that way. He that he was beating me or something. But anyway, I packed my whatever stuff I thought was mine in these little grocery bags. I'm waiting out there,
Oh my
and
God.
like I lied. I feel sick, Mom. I can't go to school today. She's like, all right, and I was like, never. Like, it was different times back in those days.
So how
Uh,
old were you at this stage?
at this time, I know I was 13 because I was going into seventh grade. I
Wow.
distinctly remembered that, and so I go over there, and she gets on the phone, and she's like just vilely threatening, "You better get your ass over here," and I was so terrified that, like, I just dropped the phone, and my dad tells me I went under his bed and just was shaking, right? And
Uh,
he, he picks up. He doesn't want to talk to you, so it's that. Then one day we ran into each other in a supermarket, like 6 months
wow.
later. It's weird, and she just let go of everything and just like walked out the store, like left all her stuff there,
Yeah.
and so that was a big transition, and it
What
was a
that's a huge transition, and it's interesting. What I know about you, Eric, is you have one of the biggest hearts of anyone I've ever met. And you and Chris have huge hearts. You welcome people into your house. You welcome people that you don't even know. If someone needs something, you welcome them in. Just as a story, I don't know if you remember this. I was going to pick somebody's sister up at the airport, and I didn't even know who this person was, but I was doing a favor for a friend who was in hospital. I couldn't do it because I was teaching and I was busy, and I was just talking about it, and I called you and you said, "Yeah, I'll do it. Whatever you need, man." So you actually picked somebody up that I didn't know and you didn't know, and you just said, "Yeah, I'll do it. I'll help you." You always help. Like you help everybody I know. Do you think that watching your dad and his wife at that moment kind of instilled this thing in you of, "Hey, we welcome all people into our family with love"?
I certainly have that value, and my dad is very he is when it comes to his family, like, he's very, very strong about family for sure. But um I picked up the values of, let's say, just like, just help, be helpful, more for when I embraced Christianity, like
Mm,
that. I'm learning that I just inside, like, I would always want to be helpful. Like, you start to figure yourself out, like, that's part of me. I resonate with that.
mhm.
Like, I love you, my brother, because you've taught me so much. And the term shield wall to me means, it means a lot of different things, right? But it means, like, I need a hand, and I was, even the karma thing. Like, I've needed a ride before. I've needed people to help me move before. So whenever those kinds of things come up, I'm just happy to be,
You jump in. So
being.
so you're 13, right? And you go live in a completely different environment out of growing up in a world of chaos. And so how did that play out with a brand new family? You had new step siblings that you were living with. In my past, I had multiple step families come in and out of my life. So I had step siblings come in and they were with us for a couple of years and then they left. And you form an attachment, and then when they go, you have to figure that out. Did you feel like your new step sibs were all family? Did you guys pull together as a family?
it was pretty much. I mean, I remember going there and thinking this is great because I've got brothers to play with now. I miss leaving my brother and my sister, uh, but like I just had to,
Yeah.
and and looking back now, it was the best thing that I did.
You grew up as a teenager living with your dad. Did you see him as kind of a model of manhood and someone to emulate and look up to?
Yes, like as far as taking care of family, yeah, as far as waking up and you know working, he's strong work ethic, strong, and um uh, every weekend he'd have all the boys out of the house, and there couldn't be a single weed in the yard.
Mhm.
Being from the Navy, the Navy was very disciplined, and he carried that with him. So we were like I never knew, like, kids get in trouble, right? But I got put on restriction. What do you mean you're restricted? What's the Navy term, right? It's like, that's what happened. I got you're getting extra duty, you're going to captain's mast. Like, that's a restriction we had. And but like I loved being there, and I integrated with all. We always had to be outside. But my dad would he would take care of us, and then his sister, uh, she always carried him when he was getting abused by his stepmother,
Mm.
but her husband left her, and she had children from more than one man. I forget, but my cousins, and anyway, he left her high and dry, and my dad went up there and got her and her, like, I don't know, Eddie, a number of children, I forget them all, and brought them all down,
Brought
and
him in.
yes, and then or no, he was with a deadbeat. I think this, yeah, that's what it was. So my dad goes and says, "Hey man, you got to get a job. You're not doing nothing up here. My sister's working like in this like a diner, feeding on. This is not happening. You get up." And so he moves them all down there. He gets in the house, and then he gets him a job. He gets that guy a job, and then the guy does really well. Everybody does well. Kids grow and graduate high school and stuff like that, move on with their lives. But then he, like, just dumps her, and and just horrible. He was just a horrible guy. But because my aunt, if you knew my aunt, like my dad's sister, she's just like amazing gold, goddess. She has a good heart. Like, she would help anybody. So maybe I got some good stuff from her. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, my dad had a really heavy drinking problem. But no matter how much he would drink, he would get up and go to work in the morning, like one of those functional drunks, right? Uh,
Mm.
and then his wife did a lot of pills, all kinds of different pills, and it was kind of like chaos. Eventually, my dad couldn't handle her drug abuse, and they separated. Um, and then and that was a bummer because you get attached to everybody,
Of course you
but
do.
then we all leave. But there was a lot of times that there was violence. She would be violent, like, and just like go and start punching on her son while he's asleep. Good Lord. And then there was dynamics with all the older young men. They're getting involved in things, and they would start to fight my dad. And my dad's, he was an Irish guy, he had temper, and, like, the Irish, like, my dad was like, he would go out a lot, and sometimes just beat up, and, like, what happened? He got in a fight. Yeah, had no fear. Unfortunately, that's the problem.
Right. That's an incredibly chaotic upbringing. My goodness. My goodness.
Yeah, it was.
We'll be right back. All right, so Eriq, you had this incredibly chaotic upbringing, and then you're finishing out high school, and then you opt for the Navy. So I guess a question that I have for you is: your dad was in the Navy 20 years, and then you chose the Navy. Did you choose the Navy because he was in it, and you kind of saw that discipline come out in him, or was it a ticket out of house to a new environment, or a blend of both? What was the choice behind that? When did you decide that that was your path out?
I just I just knew that when I turned 18, or when high school was over, like I had to be out. Like I don't know how, it just was instilled in me, like you got to be on your own now. Like once you're 18, that's and my dad never like talked to me about like college or stuff. I don't know. He never like he did. There's a lot of good things that my dad did, but like higher education, or like what do you like, I don't know. I just, so when I remember it was my own, like I gotta do something, what am I gonna do? And I joined the Navy, and joined you did it, so it worked out for you, and he was great with that. And I signed a delayed entry program, and I went in, I was about 17 years old. I was, I'd gone through boot
Wow.
camp already, and moved around a bit, and then I was living in Italy. But I do remember when I came back and I said, Dad, I joined the Navy, and I thought he was gonna be proud of me, right? And he goes, I told you to get an engineering rate. And he was really, he's really miffed about that. And I didn't know. I go, Dad, I took a test, and like they didn't give me an engineering option. They said you could wash clothes, do laundry, and work in a ship store, stuff like that, or you could be a mess cook. Those are your options, and I didn't have any other options, but I wanted to get in the Navy, so I figured, laundry doesn't sound so bad, I'll do that. And the funny thing is the duty stations that I had, my dad would tell you, like I had the best duty. I would get these jobs, like I don't know how I got it. Like they picked my name out of a hat. But like I had a job in Italy where all I had to do was work at this little community center that the American dependents came to, and if they wanted a soda, I'd take a quarter and give them a soda out of the fridge, or they want to check out a game. I didn't even have to wear a uniform. I could wear my civilian clothes. I didn't have to live on the ship. I had an apartment, and
Wow.
when the ship took off underway, I didn't have to go, and I did that for 6 months. Like that's what I did. I had another job where I learned how to swim, because ended up. They sent me to a place to like fold the towels and stuff like that. Like in the Navy, you got to do a certain amount of sea duty, and then you get your shore duty. So you do your 4 years at sea. It depends on your rank or whatever. Then you get your shore duty. So your shore duty is supposed to be cush duty anyway, right? And so they put me at a swimming pool to fold the towels and do laundry and stuff like that. And the actual lifeguard there was a guy that got kicked out of the Navy, uh, but he used to be a Navy SEAL, and he's the guy that showed me basically how to swim. I never knew how to swim until then.
Wow. That's
You
so
know,
interesting.
he,
It's
that's why I
how
went
would you
there.
think that, right? That you go to the Navy to learn how to swim. That's hilarious. It's a funny thing because, when you go in, you don't know what you're going to be asked to do, right? You could
Yeah, there is a bit of that, and I'll tell you like one thing about like when I was a kid. If I could get outside and play, like that was the thing, dude. That's what made me most happy, was being
Mm,
outside, right? Like I remember going knocking on doors and, hey, can so and so come out and play? And they're like, good Lord, child, it's 9 o'clock at night, and thinking like, why is that a problem, right? Uh, but like we played war and soldier, and all these different games, and I was always fascinated with history, and I used to play risk with some friends in junior high, and so got in a little bit, like we'd build model tanks, and so I'd study World War II, like in my junior high years and stuff, just because I wanted to know about like the warfare. So like when I joined the Navy, like I knew, like when you raise your hand, like if a war happens, like hey, you belong to them. Like they make
sure.
it clear. You lose your constitutional rights. You're under the Uniform Code of Military Justice now, and like whatever they say, we want to pull your teeth, we can pull them. we want to give you all these inoculations. We can do it. So you kind of understood. But like for me, like my dad went to Vietnam War, um,
Mm.
and you know he wasn't he was the first U.S. warship to shoot munitions into Vietnam, and
Wow.
so I got to tell you this side story. So my dad had this 5-inch shell in his garage all the time, filled with cigarette butts and stuff. And I just always saw it and I liked it. It was like a big gun. That is a cool thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so later on, like years later, I asked him. He was in the garage. He doesn't smoke anymore. And I said, "Hey, Dad, can I have that?" You know, and yeah, you can have it. And on the bottom of it, it's got World War II date on it. But anyway, I shined it up, and had it super shiny. And then later on, when I learned, about all the stuff in Vietnam, I think I was watching the Ken Burns series that was out at the time, and then so I asked my dad more questions, and then I have his uniforms from back in the day, and says what ship he was on. So then I was doing research, and I'm like, whoa. And the story goes, he goes, every these are just munition shells left over, and everybody had used them for ashtrays. And because I said, Dad, well, how many of these shells did you fire in the Vietnam? And he goes, son, everybody on board, had ashtrays, like,
Mm-hmm.
so like now this thing became a little bit like, whoa, somebody could have died like from this thing. It can, I'm, I'm,
Yeah.
and I don't know. So I turned it into a memorial, right? I filled it with black sand, and then one day I found this Buddha, and I love this. I like all different faiths. I think we talk about that later. But anyway, so I found this Buddha like this. Most of the Buddhas you see, they're holding their belly, they're all happy. But this Buddha's like mourning. He's covered in its head, and I go, "Oh, this is a cool Buddha," because there's sometimes you're sad, man. There's suffering in the
Mm-hmm.
world, and it's either the weeping Buddha or the warrior Buddha. And the story goes that there's a battle, conflict, and these two warriors meet in battle, and every time like one can't get the best of the other one, but they end up meeting in different battles. Finally, one succumbs to the other, and when he pulls off his I don't know, whatever, their samurai helmet, he looks down and it was his brother, right, or his son, something like that. And so I have this little Buddha here. There's a story, and brother fighting brother, and to put it in that which that's what Vietnam was. It was brother fighting brother. It was horrible. And so like it's turned into this little memorial for me. And I burn incense, and it's like now it's covered with ash and incense because whenever something sad happens, I burn incense, or
Mm-hmm.
so that's my little side story about
I
that.
actually, Eriq, I think that's so interesting and beautiful. It's almost like these through lines of your life keep repeating themselves, from chaos into some form of discipline, from some form of hurt into some form of love or giving, right? You grew up in a really chaotic environment. You've been married for 33 years, kind of the essence of stability for you and your family, right? It's an interesting transition and contrast to your upbringing. That symbol of something that was used for violence now being used for something for mourning and being commemorative and a vessel for love and charity and compassion and peace. I think that's wonderful. I think that's a beautiful way to turn something that is unpleasant and hard and sad into something that can be thoughtful and loving.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because the wars. That's like a thing. You just don't know like what might be tomorrow. So like when I joined the Navy, I knew something might happen. Like you would do general quarters all the time. You're always constantly prepping for war. I was fortunate initially to be on have this cush duty in Italy. And later on, I was able to go to Russia. I had great duty, but unfortunately, at that time, uh, I just drank way too much. 17-year-old boy, and you drop him
Yeah.
off in Italy, and like you go out with these shipmates. Next thing I
Mm-hmm.
know, like, I've got a problem. I mean I've been in drinking and doing marijuana when I got into the Navy. I don't know how I passed the drug test, but I did. But so I really went into alcohol pretty heavy, and literally I'm fortunate that I'm not dead because I can't. There are times where I just blacked out and I'd wake up in my rack,
Wow.
and they'd be laughing at me, and this one big guy, thank God, he threw me over his shoulder and walked me back to my back, And then eventually I'd get in trouble, and so they put you on this thing called antabuse, so like you can't take alcohol. Even they would say like anything that has alcohol, like deodorant, it'll make you violently ill. And so then I was like, oh, I can't do that. And so I started doing marijuana over there, and just I was just like really bad alcoholic. My friends had to tie me up, and I would say these vile things to people, like I would never say, and like I said horrible things, N-word, stuff like that. Like, whoa, that's not me. But they tell me, Eriq, we have to tie you and stick stuff in your mouth just to shut you up, man. So like eventually that's like where I was, like just like, and I'd go to all these brothels, of course, like, oh good Lord, you could just, Spain was like man,
Crazy.
just, yeah. And so that's where Eriq was just horrible representation of what a sailor should be. But eventually like, I just retired and burned out, and I just felt like, man, I just think like I was just tired, hungover, I could always be in trouble. And then so at some point I remember just like being tired and thinking like I was just tired, and I just wanted to die. Like I remember looking at the ocean. I was at the bow of the ship, and the water was kind of like glass, and the sun was setting, and something told me, man, wouldn't it be peaceful just to slip in and just go, and I was really thinking that and how great that was, and to have this like yeah, that sounds good. But then at the same moment there was some fear, like maybe it was like a little bit of fear, like, are you really gonna jump? Are you really gonna do this? Or maybe there was for me, it was a fear of God. Like I don't even know. Like I felt like afraid. Like dude, are you ready to meet your maker? Kind of a weird thing, right? And what I would call an encounter, epiphany, I don't know. I have all kinds of different thoughts about these things now. Yeah, there was a time when I would tell you, Chris, the Lord, but like now I'm thinking, is some being, one of the gods, I don't know. There's this influence, one of them wants you to jump. I don't know. The other one's like, I don't know, man. But I had this encounter, I had this experience, right? So then I'm like, what do you want, right? What do you want? Because I was like, want your life. My life, bro. I had an ugly life, man. Going nowhere. Like I don't know, like, but like I embraced it, and then maybe from looking back, and I do remember like going to a Catholic church a couple times, but I didn't really. I mean, I was raised Catholic. I remember we had to, wherever we passed a Christian church, like my mom would tell me to do this. I had no idea what this meant, but that's because I guess we were Catholic. So like somehow I resonated to Jesus, and I remember there was a Bible on board, and I remember reading it, and it was like a little Gideon's Bible. There's Bibles. These people put Bibles everywhere. Good for them. If you're spreading a message of good and truth, I'm all for it. And but anyway, it said, hey, if you believe in your mouth and confess with your heart, you shall be saved. Like that's it. That's all you got to do. I'm like, really? That's all I got to do? Yeah, that's it. And I could tell you, like that for me felt good. Like I felt good. Like I can't even explain it. Like clean. Like
interesting. Good. Clean and good.
So like okay, man, I'm with Jesus now, and that's my God. And then I didn't realize like, oh, you're not gonna be able to have sex no more. What? There's rules. There's rules. What does that mean? But like at the time there was no chaplain on board. Oh. But somehow I'd met other people. Like maybe I don't remember. I remember there would be a gathering of us, and we'd get together, and we'd read the Bible, and we'd talk about let's do stuff. And but like my my people that were like, Eriq, whoa, what? Because we would steal money, but we were gambling all the time. We were like always going out and just like find somebody to have, sex with that has an apartment, so we don't have to stay on the ship. Like that's mission one, like stuff like that. Like we were, and like I changed. I didn't do all that no more because I embraced this God in this way, in this path, and like if it says I can't do that no more, okay, I'm not gonna do that no more, right? And it's just
Right.
like as hard as it was, but like I quit, man. I quit looking at porn. I quit drinking. I quit smoking. It was hard. I smoked like packs of cigarettes for 50 cents back then in the Navy. And I smoked like at least 2 of them a day. I quit that. I quit it all because I was legit. Like I had this legit experience that like, like it says, the old things that pass away, new things that come. Like my best days are yet to come. I am a new creature in Christ,
A
right?
new creature, that's why they call it a born again experience.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're reborn in that moment, right? And the life you had in the past was no longer your life now. You have a new life. You had a life-changing event. You freaking changed lives.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's what happened. That's exactly what happened, right? And being about a parent, like there's things like I do have some issues with Christianity and all this stuff. Like, and I say this especially with evil, and I don't understand it all anymore. Like I can tell you what I thought back then about things, but I did know, like as far as being a parent, like I knew how not to be a parent, right? I
Right.
knew like not going to be, and like when me and Chris got, we met in the Navy, it was awesome. She was a corpsman, and we ended up both stationed at Naval Hospital Oakland. Like it was a cush duty station for me, right before they sent me back out to sea, and that's where we met. And it was awesome. We fell in love, and she came in one day and she goes, she wanted to have a baby, and then we did, and it was exciting. And then they said, Eriq, your time's up. You gotta go. And I'm like, oh no, that's not happening. So I left the Navy. Yeah, I liked it. I was having fun in the Navy, but like I wasn't gonna leave. I was not gonna be like not. My dad was a good guy and he did what he could, but like I knew like I want to be there. Looking back now, time flies so fast, Chris. I could have stayed in 20 years. Like I'd have had a nice pension right now. It would have been sweet financially, but like I don't regret doing it, dude. I was there the whole time. I saw all my kids be born. It was magical. Dude, like when you have a child and you just know like what not to do, but you really don't know what to do, right? You just kind of hold it like like the Simba or whatever in that movie. You're just like you reach out to the universe to like help me with this. It's way bigger than me, and so you're just praying blessings on it. I remember like I want to take care of this child, right? I got to get it baptized, and then like in the Christian, in there, I found out there was all these rules, man, and it depends who's making the rules. It's like anything. I remember like because there was nobody on my ship. We just talked. We read the Bible. We thought about it, But then, like when you go on base, okay, I'm going to church, right? God, I've been ready to go to church, and then you go to church every time that thing was open, man. And no, it's a Catholic guy now, it's a Lutheran guy now. Well, I'll take it all, learn it. Whoever's on duty. That's just how it was. I remember one time I don't know what I was doing. I was communing with this being, and feeling really good. And my buddy taps me on the shoulder, and I'm like, what, dude? And he goes, can we take communion from a female Lutheran? And I remember just thinking like I don't know, I don't know, like what do you
not?
like? I'm in this like communal thing, and you're trying to tell me like this might not be legit because there's rules. And yeah, I don't know. I've learned that like later on, there are all kinds of. So eventually, like I even decided that I'm going to start my own church, and we did that for a while, and we did crazy stuff, man. We helped people and brought in people, and then anyway, eventually, I moved out of San Diego and church and all of that, and came to California, back to California. I was living in New Mexico at the time, but yeah, with the kids, it was like I remember just like it was so awesome, and I wanted to do the right thing, and I got to get this child baptized because that's a big deal. And then you learn like certain faiths they don't do that. Like, well, why not? Well, the kid's not old enough. The kid has to decide. Well, okay. If the kid wants to get baptized later on his own, fine. But like for parents' sake, dude, I remember I got deep in the faith, man. I was like pastor, I was doing all this crazy stuff, and it's even weird because when I was far from the faith, I wasn't a pastor, but like my name was Divine, and I got this nickname. People like you that give people nicknames, but like somebody christened me the Rev, like Reverend Divine. Like I didn't know, I could or anything, but like I think like I always thought that was hilarious. But I yeah, I eventually I was saddened by all the rules and craziness, and then it's good for me to let go of all that. But you never let go of who you are inside, and that I'm still helping people still being the same being, and still figuring out like what God is, and all that stuff.
We'll be right back. No, and I think what's amazing to me about your story is, yes, there's a lot of trauma. Yes, there's a lot of childhood stuff, but you moved past that somehow, some way. And, your faith journey, which I'd love to kind of talk about now, is you've changed, right? I mean, your faith journey now has evolved. So you're not necessarily a radical Christian per se as you were before. You've also found a discipline in Jiu-Jitsu too, right? I'm going to actually talk about discipline in a moment, because the discipline, if you look at like the Wikipedia or Webster's or whatever, discipline's about kind of the practice of training people to obey rules or a code of behavior. You need punishment to correct disobedience, right? So it's about rule and it's about punishment in its kind of English definition. However, the root of it is Discipulus, which is Latin, which means to learn. At its core and its root, discipline's about learning. Wow. And it's about learning a practice, right? And so now, you've been doing jiu-jitsu for a bit. You have fallen into that practice. Has that also changed your faith journey too?
Well, in some ways, but just for me to sit and discipline is learning, because in jiu-jitsu you've got to learn. You got so much to learn, and you can't really learn. You got to do it. You can't. You can watch videos. But I tell people sometimes, like I don't know, like it's like, what if you were blind and now you got to learn Braille, right? Because you want to read, you want to consume knowledge, you want to move, function. Like you got to learn Braille. Well, you got to touch it. You got to know what each little dot means. And now you got to build words and eventually build sentences, and you're doing this. So jiu-jitsu is a feeling game. And like so many times you'll learn a move, instructor will show you something, and then you'll have it in your head, or maybe you've watched it on TV or you've watched it live, and you get an opportunity. That's the thing. You'll learn, you learn this move, but then in the right moment and space and if of time and motion and bodies, you have opportunity, because an arm is free to practice joint lock or stranglehold or whatever it is that you learn. And you're like a little baby that's trying to feed itself, but it can't. It keeps hitting the food. And that's like, for me, how my jiu-jitsu journey has been, which I've learned, like for white belts, like that's just the way it is. But going back to, and I do, there's a lot like in jiu-jitsu that I could talk to you about. But like going back to the parent thing, I do kind of want to end on like this faith thing. And I mean this, like, I'm going to say, I mean it respectfully, because it could come out sounding really harsh, but it's something that I've dwelt on a lot. Like, and I noticed, I could go off about like like a lot about the Bible, and I know there's some crazy stuff in there, like, and I get it, and but other stuff, like I kind of like, anyway. Besides all that, if you get to this whole evil thing, there's something wrong. There's like, or maybe not. Like my wife always is me and her. We're always talking, discussing, debating lovingly. And we have our different paths, and we are no longer the same people, which is kind of cool. Like we still love each other. We're different, we're so different than we were back then. And but so she has, she'll say Christians, and I go, yeah, whatever, but like, don't put me in that camp. Like, don't call me that. I'm not that. Like, they call themselves that, but that's not me. Like, I know, like I feel like I know my God is Jesus, right? Because like when I've had near-death experiences, like that's the God I called out to. That's it. Like, right. But maybe it might sound blasphemous. Maybe there's just one of many gods, or maybe all these ancient stories, whether it's Vikings or like it's all, they're all looking up. There's a lot of astrology involved, or astronomy. Like they were into it. They knew when, because they needed to harvest and stuff. Of course, they needed the signs. But like, even if we take the Christian story, has this come down to us, what kind of a good father puts his child in a garden and he knows there's a rattlesnake in there? Like, that's fucked up shit. That's some bullshit. Like, oh, what? Like, I can't, like, who am I to tell God what? Because God can do whatever God wants, because he's God, I guess, right? He's God. But like, I don't have to like it, right? I don't have to like it.
Right.
You want me to love you? You want me to earn you? Why would I love you? You do crazy shit like that? Oh, now the whole world is because of this? Like I recently heard this guy talk about, and it reminded me of Star Wars, right? That there's like a force out there that feeds on sadness, and it's like maybe like a black hole or something. I don't know. Sometimes I think there's so much farce. Like, as far as you can look, man, it goes on and on and on. Is it a closed system or is it not? Like, I don't know. All I know is like the farther we go out there, ain't nothing out there. I mean, I've seen. We talk about UAPs, UFOs, like all these things, but like I'm just talking about like the universe in general as we know it. Like there's nothing out there. But like also, like when you go in, like you look, and you can get deeper. You see a little bug crawling across the thing. I'll just marvel at it, unless it's a fly or a mosquito, something that causes disease, I'll kill. But I'll just marvel, like all those systems, the nervous system, the digest, it's all in that little package. But it's deeper, all the way, down to these atoms. And then they say there's more space between things. Like, why can't we just move through things? Like, maybe we can. Maybe there's some kind of weird the deeper down you go. Maybe we, like, at the end, we just fall all into this like oneness, which I think might be conscious, and maybe it's arcing towards justice. I hope. Or maybe there's like multiple dimensions that are happening at the same time. Or maybe there's nothing.
But that's the mystery of it, Eriq. That's what's so beautiful about it. I think that, everybody, I'm a position that everybody's faith journey is unique, right? It's their own. And some might be aligned with a church and a religion, which is great. Sometimes it's not that case. And someone's faith journey is so private that there's no connection to something organized. But the idea of the universe expanding and going on, and then looking down at a bug and seeing the atoms within the bug, and it's an infinite dive into the kind of the inside. I think that that's part of the great mystery, right? And I think that that's why we seek these options to understand these mysteries, right? I mean, you have a huge mystery of your childhood as to why that actually happened, right? You couldn't control any of it. You were in the midst of a chaos that someone else created. And I think now, as you start getting older, you are creating a discipline and a learning for yourself that you can control.
You're right about that in so many aspects. Because I'm just thinking, like, when part like when I was like practicing my faith, it talked, the way I read it, right? The way I read it, it talks about going into prisons. it talks about going and praying for the sick, right, and healing them. Do it. And I was worked at a hospital, so why wouldn't I want to do that, right? Let's just clear this place out. Let's just heal everybody, right? I'm gonna try to believe it, right? I'm gonna believe it because if you don't have the faith, right? You gotta have faith, whatever that is. So I was like, I got my faith. I'm disciplined. I'm walking the steps. I was like, I would take these disciplines, learning these things. Okay, I'll fast. Does it make the prayers work better if I fast? Okay, I'll fast 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 10 days. Then I got bored and I was gonna try to do 40. But like you do all these things, so you're spiritually like I don't know, we're ready to wrestle the demons or whatever, or ready to pray away the sickness. But I learned, man, I hated doing that. Because I don't like conflict. It's not my nature. Like I don't like that. Like I want peace. I want restoration. I want to go outside and have fun. Let's play, right? Like I want to do those kinds of things. Let's be better people. Let's just create cool stuff, But I don't like conflict, and so I would avoid conflict. And I felt like I when I went to go pray, and I was with this Catholic chaplain that like kind of took me under his wing and showed me ropes. Man, it's I have so much respect for pastors and clergymen, first responders, all those those people, because man, and I just remember this person was like disemboweled, and the odor in that room was horrible. And Catholics have long prayers, and I can't even concentrate because I'm seeing all this drama, and and I wanted to stop, and I said, God, this isn't my calling. But really, I felt like the Lord said, Eriq, you're a coward, you're afraid, and I followed other Christian voices that I liked, and that like minds kind of assimilate, I guess. And they would say, Eriq, this guy I listened to a lot, he would say the guard of light wants to go into those dark places. And so I do have like empathy and compassion when I see, people suffering, but like to be in the midst of their pain, which I've learned, like you have to, we have to do that. But at first I didn't like it and I would avoid it. And even today I kind of, but so I stayed with it, and I kept doing the chaplain duties. Even like I had some horrible calls, where people are broken, and sometimes they want prayer and sometimes they don't, and sometimes they're looking at you and with their eyes are like, they want prayer right now, something. And it's a beautiful to be in the moment with people like they're clenching something. I remember a guy, this poor guy, man, he was in a wheelchair, and all his life he thought like God punished him because his brother came back from Vietnam, and they were so happy he was alive. They went to go drink, and his wife says, no, you should go to church and pray. Thank God he's alive. And they're like, church merch. And they went and got drunk. They got in a horrible accident. He ended up paralyzed. And his life, he thought like God was punishing him for that. And I told him, God's not a dick like that. It was just an accident. It's okay. And I read a lot of verses to him, but I remember seeing this old man like cry, dude. Like shells had broken off of him, and being like released, so it's good if you can, be present with people when they're hurting. A lot of times you do want to run and go away, but hats off to people that actually will walk and be alongside with that people. And I'll say that, like, I'm talking to myself, because like even to this day, like, if you hear about a family member or something, like, I want to reach out and be empathetic like that. But finally, at one point, I felt like God said, okay, Eriq, you paid your dues. You're done with that. And I was like, okay, that's not my game. This is not my game. And then going to the jiu-jitsu thing, while I was in the hospital, I started realizing like there are some things that get you, like you're just, it was an accident or some cancer. There's nothing that you could do, right? But you start realizing all the people that end up sometimes, is there anything that I could do to kind of prevent this? And like, that's kind of when I started like my workout journey. I didn't do sports or anything in high school. So I didn't start working out until I was 38 years old. And I decided like, man, I was like pushing 185. If you see pictures of me with my kids back in the day, no pudgy, like I was a little, and then I started this body for life thing, and then I stumbled upon running, and it was easy, and it was cheap. You didn't need to join a gym. Like maybe you need some shoes, and it wasn't technical. Like just put one foot in front of the other. Okay, just repeat. Like I could do this, right? And then I started getting better, and I remembered my very first smile. I thought I was gonna die. I had childhood asthma, and I would always wheeze as a kid, and I would
Wow.
stutter. And then there's other things that were messed up with me about my hearing, and just like I can't see, but all my life growing up, like I never knew I was blind, like because my mom and then when my dad was around, my mom didn't give a shit, like all the time I could never see the chalkboard in school. Like when I went to my dad's house, I had this horrible ear infection, and like there had been some cotton jammed in my ear. They don't know how long that stuff was in there. Like I didn't know I was blind till I joined the Navy. So like all these different things. So I wasn't athletic, but I remember that first mile, and I would wheeze. Even the next day, I was wheezing, coughing up. But for some reason, I just did it, and then I realized the runner's high, man, and that felt great. And then I ran a mile. And like I was pretty proud of myself. I freaking ran a mile,
Right.
and I wonder if I could do two, and I could do three. And then, I didn't have like back in those days, the GPS stuff was coming up. I didn't have it, but I remember I told Chris's dad, drive me 6 miles on the odometer. Oh, this is what happened, dude. I was at like this Bible study. I was like a pastor at a house church, and like my number one deacon dude or whatever, right? Right hand man, shield bearer guy, whatever. He's talking to this dude about, hey man, there's this run. It's a 6 mile race, and we're gonna do this together. And I go, oh bro, look at me. Like wait, I'm not getting invited to go out and play, because that's the thing I like to do, Chris. Like
Go out and play.
outside and play. Like
Go
just go
outside
around.
and play. Yep.
I want to play. And they he kind of laughed at me, like, huh, like, dude, look at you, man. You ain't shit. You ain't going 6 mile run report, man. But dude, like, there was an ego thing there, like I hurt. Like, well, that's it, bro. I can run 6 miles. I had my dad drop me off 6 miles. Now go home. And so like I'm going home, and I know it's going to be 6 miles when I get there. And so then I just started doing that, and I realized, man, eventually, in life and family and everything comes, and they're like, Eriq, you really should get therapy, bro. You really should get some therapy. Even my brother's on a hunting trip one time, he said, Eriq, you've had childhood trauma. And I learned that the Christian faith helped me deal with stuff like rumination, thoughts. I even think, though, sometimes it's crazy wild outside that a lot of the child molestation, even with boys, it's not talked about a lot. It's very frequent than most people want to admit. There's, people tie a lot of shame to it. It's your fault. You have nothing to be ashamed of. You didn't do anything. You feel bad, and people make you think that because it's something bad happened to you that you feel bad, but that's not it, dude. You're beautiful. Sometimes I reach back in time to that little boy, and I say, oh,
that's it. You reach back in time to that little boy, and you tell him that he's beautiful. Tell him that you love him.
I was dealing with it for years,
Yeah.
And so when I started getting therapy, I had this, well, I'm a Christian. I have to forgive my mom, right? I have to forgive her. And I did forgive her. I went and prayed, laid hands on her. Like she miraculously, like everybody thought she was going to die. Like, and I was fervently, this is before she died the first time, but I mean, they called me from, Eriq, you've got to come down from New Mexico. I know you're in the middle of college and everything, but like, trust me, she ain't going to last a week. So, all right, but this is Eriq in his full-blown Christian mode, and we go and we lay hands, and we're praying, we're speaking in tongues, we're doing all this stuff, and sure enough, man, she and the doctors don't believe it, and they like, dude, she should. Even my brother, who's like knows medicine, paramedic, he's seen a lot, dude, she should have been dead, right? And then later on, like I thought, like, okay, it's gonna be good glory for the Lord, and my aunt, who's very devout in the faith as well. She said, Irene, when she started coming conscious, nobody believed it. She came conscious, and like the first words out of her mouth, like my aunt was so like, we had the Catholic priest doing that last rites, we had it all, man. And she said, Irene, you have to forgive Tina's this person's boyfriend. And she goes, no, I'll never forgive him.
Oh
And
my
I'm like,
God.
and then
Wow.
remember, this is crazy weird life lessons. Like you're one of my bestest friends. You didn't get to meet him. I wish you could have, but he got a stroke, a horrible stroke. He died at 50 years old, right? 50 years. What the fuck? And I had other friends that died early. And being the Christian guy, like, praying for people all the time, like literally, like, okay, who has the gift of healing? Let's go into this prison. Let's go. Like we'd go on the streets. We do like what the ancients did or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, most of the people I prayed for died or got sicker or whatever, right? And
Oh,
I remember thinking, God, you didn't even want her in heaven. I don't know, or and because I don't believe in hell or whatever, and so I thought, like, why would you heal like someone who didn't deserve it? You should have healed
right.
this guy was an awesome guy doing great stuff, a good one, and so I don't know about it all.
We'll be right back. So, Eriq, you got involved in fitness, right? And I knew you when you started to become involved in fitness, and you went deep in. Like you were as we said, the strongest guy I know. You were so into not just running, but then hauling weights while you were running, and the fitness routine just kind of took over your mind, and you almost became obsessed with it. Is that accurate? Did you become obsessed with fitness at a certain point?
I certainly did, Chris. I was, working in healthcare, being in hospitals, and just, also the kids were a little bit different. If you look at pictures of me with my kids when they're growing up, I'm just like chunky monkey, right? But once I decided to start exercising, it was I became obsessed with it, and I think a lot of it had to do with the endorphins that were released, and it just made me feel better. And then I could look at myself and go, dude, I am way better than I was when I was in high school. And I'm pushing 40, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then I just wanted to become like the best version of myself and learn about that as far as physically. And you start
That's
seeing the
that's
shred.
really that's really interesting. I want to pause on that idea, becoming the best version of yourself, and you're stronger in your 40s than you were in high school. Did you have a vision of your physicality, of what you wanted to achieve, or did that come after you started to get more fit?
I was just really amazed by it all. Like I was amazed. Like I ran a mile. Like that was a big deal for me. 3 miles, 6 miles, 6,000 feet, like swimming in the ocean. I remember the first time I saw somebody out there like wide out, in open water. And I was like, good Lord. And you could tell like they were way out there. I was like, look at that. Like, how are
Right?
they doing that? And I just became amazed by that and awed by it. And so like, could I do that? Right. It was scary, but just started like you would like, wow, I did that. I got out of that. And the starting to like it all goes back to play, but as far as like the fitness level, like I was realizing like wow, if I really pay attention to this, I'm gonna live long, and I want to live long because I want to see
Yeah.
my I think blessed by the timing of it all. um I don't have children yet, and I can't push. Well, no, oh my gosh, that's not true. I do have grandchildren on the way, so I'm very excited about
Mm-hmm.
that.
That's awesome.
And
Congratulations.
thank you. And if I keep it up, because I did have a dream, like when I was running, I said one day I will run a marathon with my grandchild that is not born yet. Now, I take that back.
Mm,
Oh,
that is
Krishna,
awesome.
like,
You know,
yes,
did it give you, because you were just talking about kind of being aware and paying attention to your fitness, and did it give you a greater appreciation for our body's ability to recover and adjust, and that the malleability and the resiliency of our physical frame?
for sure. And you just get amazed by it because was running with the guy when I first started running, and he was a cross country coach, and he'd tell me, yeah, I went out for a 2 hour run. A 2 hour run, how'd you do that, man? Because I couldn't run like a block without like wheezing, wheezed the next day. So once all that got cleared out, and he would tell me, you start to evolve at a micro level, right?
Mm-hmm.
You pushing yourself, and new blood cells will create, and new neural pathways. And like thinking of jiu-jitsu right now, like that's what I'm constantly hoping for. Because like when I'm practicing, I feel like I know what I want to do, man. But you're like a baby with that spoon, and you can't feed yourself, man. You can't put it in your mouth, and you know it's in there, right? But yeah, so with the physical part, I was just in awe by this, and can I do better? Can I do better? And then when you start getting into this and you start hanging out with people and reading stuff, like what are they doing? And everyone gets coaches, and they start paying big attention to nutrition. Well, let's play around with that. And like I used to think, if I'm gonna run, I better eat a lot, right? You hear that, in running lore or whatever. I learned everyone's got to figure your own self out. You are your own chess game. Like you could say for most people if they do this or whatever, but everyone's nutrition dietary needs are unique, and you got to figure that out for yourself.
Right. I love that idea of you are your own chess game, because everybody's body type is different. Everyone's physical stature is different. Everyone's good at different things physically. And you probably might not be aware of what you could be good at. And yeah, your nutritional needs are totally different too. And you said something, though, just really interesting about jiu-jitsu, where I want to lean into that a little bit more if we could. You said your mind is creating these new neural pathways. I actually believe too, with any kind of new exercise or any new endeavor, you're creating new things in your brain, right? New learnings, right? Just like you do as a child or just when you went to school, right? Even if you're trying a new sport or you're trying, like someone's trying pickleball. Yeah, they're going to build new neural pathways with pickleball. But what you said was that you had it in your mind that you want to do something, but physically you're still trying to do that thing. So in running or swimming or endurance, there's a mind-body connection of perseverance and resilience, but some of it's paying attention to your body mechanics. But with jiu-jitsu, me having never done it, I have to believe that you have to be acutely aware of what's happening in that moment because it goes so fast, and you're always with an opponent who's also thinking in the moment too.
Yeah, for sure, man. That's the beauty of it, right? You could watch a technique, and the masters, show you some, but it's like, yeah, but that person's staying still. You have to catch it at that exact moment, that exact opportunity to, to put the pieces together, and if they know the dance too, and it's what it's about. But for me, going into the jiu-jitsu, like doing all this stuff, right, running, and then I thought I was great at running. I did all these push-ups and pull-ups. I got into all kinds of like P90X stuff, which I love that guy Tony Horton, because I thought, dude, look at him, he's 45 years old, and like I was seeing him when I don't know, he was 50. I don't know, and I go, I want to be like that guy.
Right.
But you have people in your life that if they were like, you just see them and they inspire you. It's just so I was just always lucky to have great people around me, and to push me in these different things. But like I went to CrossFit and realized how weak I was, and I needed the basic learning just how to lift weight properly, right? Weight must be a straight line.
Right. And so when you take that mentality and you put it on the mat with an opponent, what have you learned about yourself in terms of being present in the moment at that time. I mention it because I was at another conversation. I was talking to my friend Tom, and we were talking about surfing. And for me, surfing is one of those rare moments where when you finally get that wave and you lift the back of the board up and you can feel yourself getting the wave, you're nowhere else but at that moment, at that time. Is that similar when you're on the mat?
I want to say yes and no. I heard that episode. It was great. It's just there's some great stories in that episode. But yes, although like going back a little bit for like everyone's got to find whatever it is that they like, and it took me a long time to find jiu-jitsu.
Right.
I and when I found it, like I didn't know anything, and all I know is like I went to this gym, and they said if you have 6 months of jiu-jitsu or less, go over here, and if not, go over here. And we didn't really like do anything, but I committed to myself that I want to learn this. I'm going to give myself 6 months, and you're not going to quit. And sometimes people have a hard time going to a gym. They get intimidated, right? Intimidating. You go to a martial arts gym.
Very intimidating. So, dude, why did you go? Why did you go to the gym in the first place?
I was listening to Jocko Willink on a podcast. I had listened to him a lot, and I went to a book signing just haphazardly of his in 2017 December at La Jolla, the bookstore there. And so you buy a ticket, you can get your book signed by him and listen to him, ask a question, get a picture with him. And he talked about jiu-jitsu so much. And like, I was intrigued by this, and I respected this. I liked his mentality and the way he thought, right, about things in life. And I said, well, if I'm going to go to learn jiu-jitsu, I'm going to go to his gym, which I did. But it was the traffic down there. I didn't like the commute. So I went to another gym. And in that gym, it was different. I felt like I was I want to name the gym, but like kind of throwing it out there. It wasn't given. And when you learn jiu-jitsu, some schools, like you don't even wrestle for a year. You've got a lot to learn. Person. How different now, I think. And I'm I still like, I could be telling you wrong, Chris, because I'm still white belt. But anyway, when I went to this other gym, okay, we were gonna wrestle. And I didn't know how to defend. I didn't know any basics of these, like guard, half guard, quarter guard, mount, all these basic, like even wrestling terms. Wrestling is freaking awesome, but that's what it was, man. Like when you get tied up and something in my soul deep down, like lit up like a little boy. And this is like, we're at Disneyland on a ride, or you're bull riding. It was fun, man. The inertia of it, and just, you're trying to make them say uncle, basically. Like, hey, and you're safe there, you could tap. But when you're early into it, you're having so much fun, but you don't know what to tap to and what not to tap to. And I wasn't really taught the basic mechanics. I'm getting arm barred really bad.
And you're in your 50s?
Huh?
You started this when you were in your 50s?
Yes, I that was a thing. It was a new thing, 50 and next century, right? And I want to do something new. And I wanted to run an ultra, because I have friends that do that. And I said, okay. And I never was really bitten by I liked running, but not at those distances. But I thought, you don't know until you try it, Eriq. So I said, okay. And I said, I'm going to run 150 miler when I'm 50, because it's a thing, right? Like I'm going to do that. But at the same time, I'm also learning jiu-jitsu. I'll figure it out, right? 5 months into jiu-jitsu, and we're practicing takedowns, which is, jiu-jitsu is a ground game, right? And that's where it's fun and stuff. And whether you're practicing, there's different versions of jiu-jitsu. There's sport, there's competition, and there's people that do it for self-defense, right? And unless you're really good, like most people, they're just not going to sit down. So I don't understand, like, how do we get down here where it's fun? Like, well, you have to get your opponent on the ground, and you learn about the different kinds of martial arts, right? I learned about this guy did judo. I took a judo lesson once. He goes, judo has been battle tested for 700 years. And
wow.
And it's like, if you want to get your opponent on the ground and you're good at judo, like this guy, he said, go get that broomstick. And somebody went and got a broomstick and like was coming at him like it was like a samurai sword. And like, dude, just a very subtle movement with his hips and legs. They just knew. Boom, that guy was on the ground, right?
Huh.
The jiu-jitsu, you got to get him on the ground. And when I was practicing the takedown, I had the injury, and so that was horrible, right? And
Mm.
out for 6. No, I couldn't run, jump, or pivot for more than for a year. Yeah.
Goodness gracious, was it your knee?
Yeah, I had something called a horrible triad, and it was a ACL, MCL, something else, and then I had cartilage. And you think, and right when it happened, I felt my knee. I don't know how to explain. Like I just felt like the bottom part and the top part. They both went different directions horizontally, and then they kind of came back,
Well, that
and that
sounds
was really.
awful.
And I never felt that before, and I kept wrestling, and then I stopped, I tapped or whatever, and I remember thinking I'm gonna be okay, and I was able to kind of put weight on it, and I was trying to move it around, and it felt fine. And then when we got up and tried to wrestle again, no, it was
Oh,
it
no, no,
was
no, no, no. So you were out
yeah,
for a year from that injury.
yeah, a year and a yeah, well, yeah, it was a year of no running, no jumping, no pivoting, and then after that it was.
Wow. So what did you do for fitness during that year?
I just continued what I did. Like and then Jocko, he's like this too. He has this saying or this poem is called "Good," right? And then on one of his shows that I listened to, he reads, he read this autobiography about this Marine. His name is Chester Beatty. He's like the Marines' god, I guess. And his son wrote a book. Anyway, in that documentary, he had horrible things happen to him, but he just said it. No matter what happens, he was just going to keep trying to push on. He was going to, just no matter what. It's because it was like, okay, and in another martial arts book I read by Ronda Rousey, she was a judo person, and she had a horrible injury with her leg, and so
Mm.
she just, it was like, okay, well, I'm going to get really good at arm bars now, right? So it's just like, okay, you don't have this, it's fine. You're just gonna, what can you do, right?
What can you
You
do?
still play, right? You can still play. Like you can swim. You've got 3 other limbs that are fine. When I was running no, I was qualifying for the Boston Marathon. No, was it? No, yeah, I was
You did
qualifying for
qualify
the
for
Boston
Boston.
Marathon. Yeah, but in the qualifying run, right, which was like a big deal, we worked hard for like a year, right, and then like I don't know what mile it was. It was early on. Like I felt like my calf, like it tightened up so tight, and then it like pulled and stretched really high, and
Ugh.
every time I stepped, it was in pain, but I wasn't debilitated. And I go, well, me and you are gonna be together for this whole race, right? And as long as and I qualified, and it was great. But like I just had that mentality, from listening to these guys, like it doesn't matter whatever happens to you, yeah, it sucks, but what can you do, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
you think life in general, and like I've had friends that have, sometimes when I go out and I do something, I'm gonna go run for somebody, or I like to dedicate workouts to people, and that's not a new thing, like
Right.
everybody does that. But I think even before, like CrossFit was popular for doing it, or we'd have like Pat's Run or whatever it is. I would just like kind of like in yoga, when you set your intention, like
Uh-huh.
you know, I kind of I'm going to dedicate this workout to my
I love that idea. I love that idea because, fitness is so personal and it helps you develop. But if you start thinking about somebody else and doing it for someone else or dedicating it to someone else, there's an extension that happens. I guess you got injured with jujitsu, but you still went back to it. There was this, well, obsession, I would say. There's something about it for you that keeps pulling you back despite injury. What do you
yeah.
think that is?
It's just what made me happy. What makes me so. I mean, part of it is I want to learn the magic. It's magic. Like people say, jujitsu is
Hmm.
magic. It's it's magic. It's phenomenal what the human body can do. Right? You can't underestimate. Like size and power certainly matter. There's you know I don't know nothing. Right? I don't know nothing. But like seeing it and I felt it. Like like so you see, it doesn't matter how big they are or how small they are. Doesn't matter. Like if it does matter if their skill level are equal. Okay,
Hmm.
then the bigger, stronger usually, or the I don't know. It's hard to say, man. But like I've seen big people throw little people around ragdolls, and I've seen little people like submit big people they tap or submit. I'm fascinated with martial arts. It's like the whole spectrum of it, but like mostly for me it's just jujitsu. Like I just like that. It's like wrestling, it's play, but you like it's magic too because you can very easily if you know all the hacks and you don't have to. I mean, it helps to be flexible, it helps to be strong, but there's technique to it and
Hmm.
exactly what the other person is doing, and no role is ever the same because you're always coming at a different. Everybody's body is different. What they how they feel that day. You could
Hmm.
train for race day or you don't know what's going to happen on race. You might get sick, right? Like I've been competing just like, well why not, right?
So
I
what is that like then? Because you're 50 plus, you're not in the Olympics, and you're training for the joy and the love of it, and then you get into competition, and it's actual competition. Do you think that you become better and more attuned to the craft of it in the competition?
it's you know the first for me just huge nerves, man. Like I
Hmm.
was afraid. I was afraid, right?
You
And
know what,
then
dude?
kind of like
I wonder about that, Eriq. Do you think that part of this draw is that there is a fear, but it's the idea of conquering and getting through that fear?
yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. Like, don't let for so many things. Like, don't let fear, stop you from doing what you love, or like, I've had like, I've gone out ocean swimming, and that was a big deal for me too. It took like maybe 10 years to get over anxiety of worrying about. But like sometimes you go out there and you just don't worry about it. You're just thinking of it, and it's just like you see the awesomeness sometimes on a good day when it's beautiful, like wow, it blows your mind, right? And but like the jujitsu, it's to me it's a little bit more fun, and yet it's scary too at the same time. Like you don't know what's gonna happen, right? You
Right.
know, and I was injured with my knee, and then I got injured with the shoulder, and I took like 2 years of physical therapy, and then my neck got jacked up, and then I kept having this pain in my back for a long time, and had all the eyes done, and they said, "Son, you got arthritis back there. You got spinal stenosis or whatever." And you're like, all right, this is where I am today. This is what I'm. This is my okay. Like, this is where it
Okay.
is. Sometimes you'll learn a technique, and at the moment, it's like in my mind, I can't do that. I'm gonna do the best I can. So you just try to and then get into position one way or another. But in the beginning, you don't know what you don't know. You just
Right.
see what people can just do. It's amazing. And then once you and after you get thrown around and you, you learn, you start to learn, and there's a little bit of like the fight or flight sense. Like when
Oh.
you're getting when you're getting choked on, there's a lot of ways. You have blood chokes where you cut off I think the carotid arteries, and it doesn't matter how big you are, and every woman should learn this. I'm convinced of. Uh, but you could somebody could pass out like in 6 to 14 seconds.
Hmm.
Um, and then there's strangulation. There's different kinds of there's blood chokes, and then there's neck cranks where you can still breathe and stuff.
Oh my
But
God,
like
that sounds awful. A neck
you know,
crank.
yes, highly uncomfortable. So I just like now, yeah. Like I've learned, right? Like now I'm still learning constantly, but like I think I've been through enough injuries and like praise,
Hmm.
healed. I keep healing, and like I said, you just think of like what others who haven't made it as far as you should go out and have fun and get as much use out of this thing as you
Out of
can.
the vessel as you can, and you keep healing. But I love that comment you just made about a moment of fight or flight, right? And that there are very few things in our world today that test our mettle in a physical way, right? We are not now dependent upon our hunting skills to eat. We go to the grocery store, we buy groceries, we put in the refrigerator, right? I don't have to actually really learn how to throw a spear or brave myself in front of a huge woolly mammoth, right? And with 2 or 3 other guys and say, okay, we're going to bring this woolly mammoth down, right? And that's a thing, right? That's a moment of tension and a moment of pressing yourself to a point that you don't normally do. And in modern day, especially for men, we have very few opportunities to do that, right? Professional athletes do, and they can have that moment. But I would think, and I'll ask you, do you think that physical area where someone's got you around the neck or you've got someone else around the neck and there's this tension moment physically, that brings something out in us that we might have lost?
Yeah, I think for sure. I think absolutely. I've been thinking about wrestling a lot lately. Like, remember a beginner. When I get to train, you could tell wrestlers, like, if people had wrestling background real fast, and wrestling. Think about Greco-Roman wrestling. Of course, it was like the ultimate shield wall, right? Way back in the day,
right.
There's ancient texts that talk about like the wrestling, like getting them getting them on the ground, and the wrestling's like awesome. But you do initially, like, people, you could panic, you don't know what to do, you're getting smashed, where some people are so good at applying pressure in the right spots that you can't even take a breath. Your rib cage won't, and there's no room, and then there's some people where you look at, sometimes you just see people get out of anything, and it's the smallest thing, like, a heel hook. I've been learning a lot about leg locks, and fascinated by that, because that old story about Achilles' heel. That a giant of a human being, if you get their heel, you could submit them, break their leg. Some people could break the leg and the hip at the same time. But when I'm doing that, like, I don't think about that. It's fascinating to know. Like, I'm starting to learn a little bit of the history of it, and I have some athletes that like wow. But yeah, you could easily and gently submit somebody without hurting them. You
right.
don't have to.
And that's part of the art too, I guess, right? The art of it, of doing the submission without causing the bodily harm, and really and the art of it. And what I get as I get older, I really appreciate craft, and I really appreciate people who are masters of their craft, no matter what it is. And I think that you probably moving into this world of jiu-jitsu, which you knew jack shit about, right? You knew jack nothing about jiu-jitsu, and you roll up in a studio, you say, I'll set up for 6 months, sure. And suddenly you're a baby in the woods with masters of their craft.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, exactly. And so, like, and then when I was learning this jiu-jitsu during my injury, the COVID hit, all the gyms closed, right? There are some gyms going on underground,
right.
But we're trying to show you how to wrestle with a chair. This would be but luckily my son's roommate, and we were considered in our own little circle,
Yeah.
He had jiu-jitsu background, and so I started training with him. Like, I try to do 3 times a week, but I didn't know what I was doing, and I'd look up some lessons on Gracie online, Gracie Academy online, and I'd follow along, and but, like, he would just dominate me always. My son told me that this guy likes to punish you for your mistakes. And 50 pounds heavier and 20 years younger. and I'm just constantly getting smashed. Once COVID is done, like I'm ready to join a gym. Like I am ready
Right.
to join.
Right.
I wrestle with somebody my size. I want some coaching. I need that. I need some help. And
But
he
I love the, you know what? I love the humbleness though. And I think it says something about you where I think we talked about this earlier, that there's the definition of discipline has its Latin roots of discipulus, which means to learn. And we've used discipline as kind of like a harsh thing where I'm going to discipline you, and it has this punishment aspect. But for you, it seems this constant sense of wanting to learn more, of seeking out coaches, seeking out people who can help you get better. I think that's probably a lifelong or a life perspective that you have, that Eriq has, that applies to jiu-jitsu. Yeah, but it applies to your life. It seems like you're always constantly trying to learn.
absolutely. Yeah, I want to learn this. I want to learn, even I want to learn. I found this gym, and I found it was the closest gym to my house at the time because I didn't like the commute, and it just happened to be a place called 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu. 10th
Okay.
Planet Jiu-Jitsu was created by this guy named Eddie Bravo, and I went to that gym, and that, San, San Diego, it's Southern California is a mecca for like talent, the whole world, from LA, San Diego. It's just, and jiu-jitsu in particular, there's a lot of great people. This was a martial arts school where they didn't just do jiu-jitsu, but they also had kids programs and everything. They had programs for law enforcement. But when and they even train martial arts there, like people who are currently competing at that level and doing those things. And it come to find out, I didn't know. I walked in at 6 a.m. class because that's like, I'm old. That's when I want to work out. That's all levels. All right, I'm going there. And this guy named Richie, the Boogeyman Martinez.
Nice.
I don't know who he is, man. But then I started seeing him. And at the time, I had no idea who this guy is. I had no idea. But like one of the things that just that gets, sometimes you get lucky and you're just surrounded by greatness, right? And yeah, these people are, he would teach a technique, and then you would practice it. You just raise your hand and somebody, okay, they're your training partner for the day, and you agree to be each other's dummies, and that's the thing. Learning the sport, you talk about learning, it's such an intimate sport, right? Because you're close. You're like, you're sweat, you're the cheek, you're trying to, you're very close, right? And so you need your training partners, and once you develop relationships with them, and they know your weaknesses, they help you. You need, you need to know that you're not always going to be destroyed. Like I was going to places where I thought it was like a Friday night thing, right? A Groupon. Here's like 13 guys that showed up today, and the white belts are just there to get destroyed, right? Like I
Right.
felt like that sometimes, like and they didn't know like how to stop this onslaught. Like, but there's techniques, right? And when I go into 10th Planet, I said, that's it, man. I'm staying here for life. I was so happy. I tattooed their logo.
Right. You got in, and I think, it's a devotion to that place where you feel at home, and we all want to have these places where we feel at home and welcome, and that is the right fit. Do you think that in the years you've done jiu-jitsu, you've become a stronger man as a whole?
For sure. Because when you're in an uncomfortable position, then you can't escape it. Well, um, you can sometimes, you get, if you get the technique, if you work. Now sometimes you have to tap, right? Sometimes you have to learn when to quit, and that's true, man, because you can actually get more hurt by not tapping. There are some people that have egos, right? And like, not, when you're getting hurt because you don't know when to tap, like partially that's your training partner's fault. and I don't blame my training partners. It just depends, right? It depends on
Mm-hmm.
you're
But
training
it's
with.
also you. If you don't tap, you're giving yourself into injury because your ego won't allow you to tap. Dude, that's a total life lesson, right? There are certain situations of uncomfortableness that we can escape from, but there are certain situations of uncomfortableness where we need to submit and we need to say, I need help, or I need this to stop, and this isn't something I can fight through.
Yes, yeah, exactly, yeah. And you're talking about competition. Competition is a little bit different, right? And there's different rules to different competitions. I've gone to 3 different ones: Grappling Industries and DCC, and then another one, Naga, North American Grappling. So, but anyway, they got different rules, and at certain levels of your skill, you're allowed to do certain things, but some things you're not allowed to do. You in my age bracket, thank goodness you're not allowed to pick up somebody's.
Thank you.
Yes. Some there's you it's a more of a point based system, and I'm still figuring all this out. I don't know it all,
Mm-hmm.
but you sign these waivers, right? Like you could die,
Oh.
which I mean technically, God forbid. But then when I so there was like a little bit of fear, but like at the same time, it's like, okay, it's different now when you're in a competition, kinda, because you actually get to test what you're applying. Because in the gym, how do I know, you know, Chris wasn't just like being easy on me, right? Like, how do I know
Mm.
I really learned it? This person's not going to be easy because this person wants to win, right? So how does I stand
Yeah.
up? Be careful, be careful. Defend yourself at all times, kind of a thing. So it's kind of like that kind of scare. But on second hand, it's like, dude, you've been competing kind of all your life, right? Remember that first 5K you did? It's just
Mm-hmm.
like that. It's the same thing. When I started learning triathlon stuff and starting getting into ocean swimming, I was on a triathlon team at work, and I went out with these colleagues took me out in the water for the first time, and it was like, oh,
Yeah.
it's just okay, you're fine, it's okay. And then you toe the line with everybody else, and it's to me it was like, Eric, it's the same kind of thing. And it is when you go to these competitions, they've got little kids there all the way to elite athletes.
Right. Right. It's so interesting. It's kind of like this metaphor for life where um we're all on our own personal journeys, right? We're all trying to get better as people. We're all facing moments of fear and uncertainty and doubt. We are all sometimes putting ourselves in an unknown spot that we've never done something before, and we're confidently trying to move forward. And it's always easier with friends. It's always easier with help. It's always easier with other people to help you cross that bridge from fear into action. And yes, you have to do it yourself, but to have company around you that can bring you along makes all the difference in the world. And when you go to a competition, I love that idea that you said you're testing what you know, because the other person is not going to, they don't know you intimately. And you said before, this is an intimate sport, right? And you get to know your partner physically intimately, like you physically get to see their freckles. Like you know exactly where their freckles are, you know what their sweat smells like,
Yes,
right?
bro. You're scratching me, man.
Right, they scratch you, right? You know where, the bend of their shoulders or whatever, right? You know all this stuff about them, and then suddenly you're with a stranger who's going to press you, and I guess hopefully the competition presses you to be your best self and to push yourself forward that you wouldn't do otherwise.
Yeah, it's all that. It is. You get to test that, but there's also like an exhilaration about ever since like 2 kids are on a playground, and they let's see who can run the fastest or whatever.
Right.
There's and whether you're an elite athlete or you're an old man, in the old man division.
There
It's
is something about that, right? I think it might, I don't know if it's different for men or women. I don't know. I think for men though, we do have this competitive nature to us where even if it's not necessarily to beat the other person, it's to get better, right? To compete against yourself. There are times when the only way to do that is through another person, right? The only way to do that is through this competing against someone else, so that by either besting them or beating them or wherever, you become better. And really the point of it is you getting better. I know we saw those clips of the Olympic athletes where even though they got the gold medal, they were disappointed because they didn't get their personal best time, right? It wasn't about beating the other person. It was about being their best self.
Exactly. Yeah. In those. Yeah. 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 Absolutely. But at least in this, in the competitions that I've been going to now, it's there's a camaraderie that gets built with your training partners and your club, or your, you want to call it. And like, to me, it's kind of become a new church. Like, every Sunday morning we have this thing. They have it. It's called open mat, and different gyms have open mats. Like, but our gym does it on Sundays, and some gyms charge to go. Our gym doesn't charge, but you just show up and sign a waiver, and you're welcome to wrestle with anybody. So it's kind of cool
Welcome
because
in.
school come, and then in the one that I practice, we don't wear gis, so you don't know the other person's skill level, right?
Ah,
I've you can be, you don't know, but right, you see, but you have this kind of unwritten agreement. And even then, it's not like competition, because in competition, you get the whole mat, right? And when you're doing open mat, like what I call every Sunday church now, it's like there's a lot of people and there's not a lot of space, so you kind of, you're not like really practiced, like going like full on, right? But
that's such an interesting community, right? And I think that by calling it Sunday church, I want to lean into that a little bit. I believe it. So in one episode, we talked about the difference between religion and church and faith, right? So there's the Christian or the Muslim or the Buddhist or the Jewish religion, right? Big millions of people. Churches are local manifestations of that faith. But churches actually bring a community together, and that's the job of church. The church is a community, right? Like-minded folks, like souled folks coming together, helping each other out, giving each other a sense of welcome and safety and sanctuary within a fellowship of people. I can see that's why you call it a church.
Yeah, it's yeah, for sure. I think of it. I think of it like that, like a tribe, like and all humans, gravitate towards their clubs, their interest, their, and I finally found mine, I think.
Found your tribe.
It's fun, and the training partners that you have, of both genders, males and females, young and old, you train together, and then when you go to compete, like they're cheering you on, right? I went to a competition, like, it was on the board. I don't know about. I'm just still learning this stuff, right? But they wrote, like, here are the competitions coming to our neck of the woods, and so I signed up for one. Like, when you signed up for a CrossFit competition, or like any of these competitions, except for like running's different, but like they want to know what gym you go to, right? Like, what gym, like what's your belt level, who's your sensei or instructor, or who owns that gym or whatever, and you got to put in all this data. So I figure, like, okay, they're gonna know, like, my coach is gonna know that I signed up. Well, they didn't know. Like, this particular one didn't send him anything. He didn't know. Anyway, when I showed up, I was alone. I didn't have like a coach in my corner or anything, and which usually there's somebody there. Like, but I don't really, honestly, it would help to have that, because like they do, it does help to have a coach in your corner. But this time I didn't have nobody, and it was always like, oh, I'll be fine, I'll be okay. And I didn't want to I wasn't going to tell the coach, hey, I've got this competition, you should drive out here. I didn't want to make him do that. I'll be fine. So anyway, I was fine, but the thing about it, like, it was a really cool live streamed thing, and my kids in California got to watch it, right?
Wow.
Live. And it was like a big deal. It looked like you were watching something like on a UFC event. The Six-8 came in. Eriq wins by submission. We had 3 rounds because it was, and it was my first armbar ever, and I remember like when he came at me, like I thought, wow, this guy is strong like a bull, and I just practiced my techniques, and which I don't have a lot of, but like to credit to one of my I learned at 10th Planet San Diego. He says you have one job as a white belt: escape, escape, escape. Like that's it. Escape. You're a lot of fear goes away. Like, okay, I know what's gonna happen. Like I'm waiting. I'm okay now. I can get out. Or don't go. No, okay. You learn what hand to grab and what hand not to grab. You learn these things. You learn like don't let anybody in here.
Right.
Guard.
Don't let any of that space. It's so interesting what you just said. You said your fear goes away. There's this wonderful, well-known passage from a science fiction book called Dune. They had them, they made the movies out of it, where this idea of, there's a mantra that Paul Atreides says. He goes, "Fear is the mind killer." And then goes through it. I will, and then he says, "I will let my fear pass through me, and only I will remain." Right? Meaning that you can let go of fear, and once fear is gone, you can just be yourself. It was so interesting what you just said. Like in the moment, the fear goes away, and then that releases you to be the best you can be.
Yeah, exactly. My problem is at this point in my journey is, okay. I'm not so much panicking or anything, and I'm okay here. And and there's a lot of different but I'll get to a good spot sometimes. Like I was with the guy this past Sunday. He's way more bigger and skilled than me. Not way bigger, but anyway, I got to a dominant position, but I just didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to what do I do from here to submit him? And I had to be very careful, because one wrong move and he escapes and he gets back all over me. And you that's the thing too, is like you learn it doesn't have to be constant. There's moments where, like, I've had it where I'm in pain right now, but I have nothing to tap with. Like, I might not even be able to speak. All my limbs are, you figure it out. Like you find something to tap with. Sometimes I forgot the point of that, but anyway, like if you let go of a good position, they're gonna get all over you. And but yeah, I don't know. I'm rambling now. I forgot my train of thought there.
I think what you were talking about with this sense of, moving past fear, being in the moment. I have to believe that all this training changed you, that you're a different guy now because of what you've done with jiu-jitsu. It almost changes your sense of faith. It changes your psyche. It maybe changes how you approach every single day. Like you talked about at the early part of our conversation, it kind of rewires your brain a little bit. I have to believe you're just a different guy.
For sure. Yeah, I've gotten bitten by that bug, and it's taken over me. I used to I'd watch like when I was watch martial. I never thought I'd be into when I saw the UFC cage fights and stuff. I thought, oh my gosh, like no,
right.
I want to see that. And like now, I still don't want to see that. I never want that. Like, those people they want to do that. They want to pursue that. They're consenting and all. And it's really, it comes down to we've always wanted to know like what, who's the best, or look at we just admire that sport, whatever I'm not in that kind of that hasn't bitten me. I have no desire to do that, but I do have, I do love the jiu-jitsu, the magic of it, and learning. So yeah, it affects every day, like how I move now, how I, what things are how do I maximize my time? Because I don't have a lot of it left. Like when I did my first competition, this guy looked at me, he goes, "You're going to compete?" And I go, "Well, if not now, when?" Right? But it wasn't like, at first I wasn't that scared. I go, dude, it's going to be fine. It's going to be like one of those 5K runs. It's going to be okay. Right. And then, and it was fine. In fact, the two guys in my first competition, I lost on points and I lost by a submission. They said, hey, we're glad you're here. It's only been us two, and there's another one of these in October. We're glad to have you here. So I was like, oh, great. If no one shows up, like no one could play, right?
Right. You got to. Everyone's got to show up to compete, to play.
I medaled, and I was like, at one point I was like, well, dude, you would have medaled anyway, right? All you had to do was show up, basically, right? And I thought that at first, and then this one guy told me, he said, everyone, Eriq, who steps out on that mat is a champion. I'm gonna tell you that. And this was coming from a guy who was a champion, and this was at ADCC. And I used to remember every time you'd see me in the locker room, or you'd see anybody, champion.
Champion. That's right. You know what? I think when they give kids participation trophies, I'm not super game on that with the little leagues. And however, if you show up, sometimes just to show up, you could be a champion, right? You show up and you go to those competitions, or you hit that 5K run, or you hit that ocean swim, why not, right? The champion of your own self, the champion of your own race.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great. I'll keep competing, and then something a family member of mine who trains Jiu-Jitsu out here, although I was so devoted to 10th Planet System when I came here, and this is like how the universe has been working in my favor. The closest gym to my house here, when I moved to this new place in Arizona, is a 10th Planet gym.
No way.
Have aligned, right? It's like it couldn't be more perfect. I go there, and in San Diego, where it's there's a lot of people there. There's a bigger gym, but over here, there's not many people at all. And I'm having like black belts and brown belts personally coach me, like, stop. And like, no, Eriq, your foot needs to go here. Like, really, like, well, I wasn't getting that over there just because it was
so big.
Place.
Yeah, you know what? The universe does conspire for you, right? I think that it's so funny when you put yourself out there, and I might be getting it wrong, but I think in the Muslim faith, they said if you take one step, Allah will help you take the next two, right? Or kind of pull you along. Sometimes the universe does that. It's so great that you found that close by. I guess my question for you, Eriq, is this going to be a pursuit? Like, is this a lifelong pursuit for you now?
Yeah, I'm having fun, and it's great, and I enjoy it. Yeah, so going to keep progressing it. And I was going to tell you that my family member out here, he's a blue belt, and he says, I wish I would have competed more as a white belt. And I thought about that, and I thought, you know what, you're right, because there's going to come a time, I don't know when, you sign up and it says how many years experience do you have, or what belt are you, right? And how do you get your next belt? Like, different schools do it different way, right? And I don't know, like it doesn't, like where I go, like, yeah, do I want to get a blue belt? Of course, why wouldn't I, right? I want to progress, right? Like, but it's like at the same time, like, it's not that big a deal, because when you tap hands and you start, you find, like, there's no lie. Everyone, they know, right? Like, you just learn real quick. And so, and these competitions, they're like, hey, don't come in here sandbagging, or like saying you're better than you are, like saying you're signing up at a white belt when you're a blue belt. I don't know those things or how they're judged, but it's cool. They keep a record of it. So at some point in my, they're gonna not let me compete as a white belt anymore.
Right. That's right. I love that, though, like, when you slap hands, Eriq, and you say there's no lie, right? I think that that's a really interesting purity of the sport, right? It's one person and one person. There's no lie. You are who you are. You're coming with whatever skill you've got against someone else who's got whatever skill they've got. And you're both trying to figure out how you can be the best version of yourself against your opponent. And there's no lie. Yeah. It's intimate, it's physical, and at the end of the day, someone's going to tap out and one person's going to tap. The question is who it's going to be. It's a very pure moment.
I struggled for a long time with, not wanting to injure my opponent. There's something called an arm bar, and you can do arm bars in all kinds of ways. But like, I shied away from it because I was afraid I was going to hurt. But it's just like my first submission I ever got in competition was with an arm bar. Like in the moment when I needed it, like we both signed waivers. You tap. I'm not gonna let go.
Mm-hmm. Right? No, that's true. That's true.
And then we were great. We helped each other, and we had the utmost respect for each other. And
right. It's awesome. It's a very intimate moment.
Yeah.
Say that again.
I told him to come back and compete again too, because it was his first competition, and I said, "There's not a lot of us out here, We just and even the people that they found that met my weight, or skill level, were like still 10 years younger than me."
Mm-hmm. That's awesome that you invited him back. Well, dude, I think you're amazing. This is a fantastic conversation, and thank you for sharing this important part of your life, because it's become so important for you and become one of the things that you use to define who you are. And I love these aspects of it, right? And it all kind of makes sense. And we know more about you, Eriq Devine, because of your pursuit of this. It's more than a sport. It's a passion. It's a lifestyle. It's wonderful.
Well, Chris, I'm honored and happy to be here, to be invited on this. What you're doing is great. I know you're a fan of Hamilton, and there's that line that says, "Who lives, who dies, who tells your story." And I think there's too many stories that are being left untold, and you have a great knack at bringing out these stories. And so, yeah, thank you for all the work that you're doing, and I appreciate you, my friend.
Oh, Eriq, I love you.
I love you too.
All right. Have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow. Oh my goodness. What a incredible spirit in Eriq. What an indomitable spirit in Eriq. It's like he's made of titanium, unbreakable, unshakable, moving forward in life. Despite the chaotic background and the challenging upbringing, he has now found himself in a place where he's created discipline, he's created a beautiful, loving family, he's moving his life forward, and he's always learning. Discipulus, always learning. And he's manifesting it now in this really intense, intimate jiu-jitsu practice, which I think is both courageous and brave. And I think that he is growing in ways that other men hope to learn from. I hope you learn from this conversation. What did we learn from Eriq? That you can be unbreakable, that you can move through chaos, and you can create your own discipline in life and move yourself forward and learn all the time. I love it. And I hope you love this podcast. I hope you've enjoyed these episodes. I hope you listen to more of them, download all of them, and I'd love to have a conversation with you. And book a conversation, get a conversation guide, and kind of see how we do it. I make it comfortable. I make it memorable. It's a great moment that you can share your story because you have a great story to share. And we can all learn from you, and we can all learn from your story and get better together. So once again, visit menfolkjourneys.com, book a conversation. I can't wait to yik yak with you. Thank you for listening. Word bid Falared.